This episode includes a discussion about sexual assault and personal trauma. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
I was the first Playmate they ever allowed a sublicense, basically.
Okay.
And, that all stopped. It went from 93 to 97.
Welcome to another fantastic episode of the Dre and Smiley Inner Circle.
Man, Smiley, we got another great one today. We always enjoy guests that are multifaceted, right? So today's guest is no different. Charlotte Kemp is what I would call multi-talented entrepreneur. She's been a model, she's been an actress, an author, producer. Her career actually began in athletics before stepping in front of the camera as Playboy's Miss December 1982. She was a competitive swimmer. She played tennis. She modeled internationally. She's acted in Europe and in the United States. And her legacy is one that's kind of bridges the worlds of fame, business, leadership, female empowerment. She's kind of, some people might say, is a pioneer of sorts. So, with that, Charlotte, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
So tell me this, Charlotte, in terms of your background, your journey. If I'm not mistaken, it started in the Midwest
Yeah,
and you
Michigan,
were in
Detroit.
Michigan. Okay. And
Yeah.
you're involved in athletics and
Yeah,
swimming,
I started
tennis.
swimming when I was, like, 3 years old, the half lengths competitive swimming, and I
Wow.
went all the way up, and that's one of the 4 questions, so I can't answer all that. And then I played pro-am tennis, and I run 33 marathons and 2 endurance runs and 2 triathlons. Yeah,
Wow.
I've always
Triathlons.
I've always been a jock. It's just
Okay.
been it's my saving grace, you know,
Hmm.
because I have an anxiety disorder,
Okay.
and the further I go, the more endorphins kick in, and I'm high as a kite.
Okay. Okay. And so, if I'm not mistaken, one of your, in terms of academics, one of your passions studying biology and psychology at one point. So, talk to me about your journey from going from being an athlete, somewhat of an academic studying psychology, biology, to the bright lights of acting and Playboy. Talk to me about that journey. Detail that
Well,
for me.
I was in college, and I was not doing well because I was modeling a lot in Chicago and New York, so I would take these puddle jumpers up from Bloomington. So, I mean, English, I did well in psychology and synchronized swimming, of course, but it just got to the point where my grade level fell, and I went, "You know what? My head's not in this." So, I went to Chicago. I had, done a commercial in Evansville, Indiana, and my hair was pure blonde,
Hmm.
and then I went to the Playboy Modeling Agency, which is an agency separate from Playboy Playmates. It was like, a separate agency. Did a couple things, and then Playboy, my roommate was Jill DeVries, and she was a Playmate in 78, and she was my roommate. And she and I had like a bottle of wine, and she said, "Well, come on over. I want to show you the whole building and everything because they've been trying to get me." And I was like, "No, no, no, no." And so I went over with her. I go up and there's this whole set, makeup artist, everyone just poison. And I'm like, "Oh my God." So we had a couple more glasses of wine. And I just went, "Okay, inhibitions are down." And I did it.
Okay.
So,
It was,
so
it was, they wanted me at 17
Okay.
to pose for Playboy. And I think my brother almost like wanted to kill the scout.
Yeah.
And it just, at that time, it felt right, you know?
Okay. Okay.
you mentioned that you were in college and you were flying different places doing photo shoots before you got into Playboy. What was the origin story in high school where you discovered to be a model or in eighth
Actually, it was,
grade?
when I was in 8th grade, an art studio asked me to be the model. Not naked or anything, it was basically body form and face and hair and things like that, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I went before that, I went to Chicago and started modeling there, and then went to New York and was elite, wanted me as a model. So, but at that point, I still had a lot of baby fat. I mean, I weighed like 125 pounds. I'm 5'8". Now I'm like 114, and well, I just couldn't accept getting older and being fat.
Well, no, that's fascinating. So you started in 8th grade, and how long were you only a model before you said, "You know what? I wanna be an author. I wanna be an actress."
I
When did
I
you
started
make that
writing.
switch?
My sister's my sister taught me to read when I was 2 years old under our nightlight. By the time I was 3 and 4, I'd read J.R. Tolkien's The Trilogy, and I started on, Fitzgerald, and then Faulkner, and then Hemingway, and by the time I was 8, I was reading full-on novels, novels, novels. I was always a reader, and I still am, but it
Oh,
Interesting.
just
so it's
that
always
actually
been
was
there.
my love, is writing and reading.
So how many books have you written?
The first one is for My Eyes Only, which, yeah, didn't do very well, and Centerfolds that it took me 26 years to get all the Playmates, because when I first started writing it, they Hef was alive, and they thought that, they wouldn't invite him to parties. They were, like, very suspect of, what would be in there. Finally, when Hef died, there's 20 women in the book, and 9 of them are dead, but they gave me their full stories. So, and, good, bad, and ugly. And that's how you know, finally the book finished when I got true stories, you know.
So when you look at the stories you've heard, is it a guide for a young model coming up? Who would be the target audience?
This is actually stories from our lives as being playmates. Now, some of them go through the playmate process. A lot of us talk about, like celebrities and in our lives as being playmates. And it's
So
not a go ahead.
let's pull the curtain back just a bit. So let's take someone, for example, who took the typical path, what I would call typical. They go to college, graduate, work in the corporate world. You ask them about their life in the corporate world, they'd say, worked 8 to 5, climbed the corporate ladder, and it was rough, it was challenging, yada, yada, yada. Pull the curtain back on what it's like to be a playmate during that era. You can tell your own journey and maybe share some of the journeys with the others that you interviewed that are in this book. What's that journey like?
Well, I mean, if you've read the book, you'll see that everyone's journey is totally different. Some girls had to wait like 8 years to become a playmate. Mine was like boom, boom. Saturday night, I did, the pre thing, and then Sunday morning, limousine picked me up, and my centerfold was done by Wednesday. But a lot of women had to wait a long time, and I never knew that. And it's not a book about being modeling. Like I said, it's our own journey, each woman's journey, and stories about being a playmate and who, celebrities, blah, 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 which we were with and, what happened and stuff like that. There's a couple stories that are very sad. There are a couple stories that are, a lot of stories are, wow, I didn't know that. But it's not meant to be like a guide. It's not meant to be anything except for like what fans didn't know, what Playboy didn't know, and what other playmates didn't know about each other. So it's kind of a mix of basically you know, our stories as playmates.
What
So
what's been the greatest challenge that you've had to overcome, if any? Maybe misperceptions, maybe I don't
yeah,
know.
I know what you're getting at. And there has been misconceptions that which I didn't like the A&E whole thing, the A&E, because it made us look like hookers, drug addicts, everything else. I mean, it made us look bad. And I started the Playboy running team to elevate that we were working for charities, everything else. I always try to elevate our status. It's just not like, we were easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that whole show basically put us as like, we were like hookers, drug addicts, and all this other stuff. And I was like, what? Where did that come from? And, it's not that I despise that. It's just that I don't think for three-quarters of the playmates, that was a true archetype. So my book just tells the stories. And, I've always been offended by the fact that, yeah, the preconception of,
Mhm. Tell
you
me
know,
this, with all the playmates that you've interviewed and for that book, The Centerfolds, tell me a success story where you interviewed, a person or a couple different people where they were able to catapult from being, I don't know, a clerk at the local grocery store to this being their launching pad into something greater, similar to yourself, owning businesses, things like that. Is there a success story you can think of that you can share?
there is not one story except for maybe Star 80. And she was dead before I got into the scene, but that catapulted her into films, etc. A couple women went over with Bob Hope, entertaining the troops, and I know Dee Dee Lind and another woman were actually on the arms when they went to the moon. They were actually there with them. I mean, not literally with them, but they had their pictures with them. And I think that's a pretty kinda cool catapult, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Let
And, like Ola Ray went on to do Thriller with it, Michael Jackson, and she's a beautiful human being, and, a lot of women have catapulted from that, and, I mean, God, I can go back and name a lot of people that actually Kim Mallon went into doing movies, women went into doing the Playmate singing group, and there are a lot of stories of where women as being a playmate, but actually got further than, us being playmates.
So Playboy Mansion, that was someplace we all talked about. We all knew what it was. We all wanted to get invited to the mansion. It was like it was part of our youth. But let's say someone listening now, they don't know of the Playboy Mansion. Is the Playboy Mansion still relevant?
They don't have parties there. I know the man or the corporation who bought it, and I think they're in Florida, but renovated it and did all this stuff. I haven't seen it, but back in the day, yeah, it was like a kind of like our American castle type of thing, and we could do whatever we wanted. At any time of the day or night. And it was like a playground. It was fun. And I don't think they'll be able to see the Playboy Mansion anymore. I think that's kind of like, past. I mean, I think that up until 2000s and then when Hef died, because Hef through the corporation, actually, he didn't own it. The corporation owned the mansion, as did the one in Chicago. And when he died, it reverted back to the company. So he lived there uh, from the on the corporation's dime.
So research, I heard you say you like living in Spain. So
I
you're flying on a you're flying from here to Spain and you have a person that's 25 and you're like, "Oh, I was a playmate at the Playboy Mansion." How would you describe that to this person?
I would say it was good, bad, and ugly, but it was fun. I mean, you know, the Playmate Olympics, we used to drink like bottles of champagne. We used to, we're basically, you're like on a kids free zone and going nuts. And that's what we did. We used to, I think Gig Gagel and I and Timberly Heron used to take boxes from the cellar to and do whippets.
What's a whippet?
I didn't even know what a whippet was. And it's where the whipped cream, the gas that comes out, but you don't get the whipped cream. You kind of, you know what I mean? And basically, it made you really high, and we would run all over the property and just do wild and crazy things. I mean, in high school, in the yearbook, as my picture said, "The girl most likely to," and that was me. I just kinda, like, took it all in. When I was 3 years old, I made 3 things that I wanted. I screwed one up, but one, I wanted to everything the universe gave me I wanted to, experience. And number 2 is I wanted to travel over the world. I did that. Number 3, I wanted to have a child. And the love of my life is my son.
You mentioned a movie that you're in and it's out. Can you tell us about the movie?
Yeah, it's on Netflix. Frank Henenlotter, who had done Basket Case and Basket Case 2, did Frankenhooker. And it's on Netflix, and it's like a whole new following, which is really funny. And I'm in like the first half. I'm the hooker that, you know, my head blows off, and it's very comical and not too, like, scary, but almost in, like, a horror comic horror, you know? And it's great. James Lorenz and Patty Mullins and all my other friends, we were a tight crew.
So tell me this, Charlotte. So you went from, again, an athlete, you made the transition into modeling. You're fortunate enough to be on the cover of a worldwide publication, Playboy. And then you pivoted and made a brand. You created your own brand and started some business
The
entities.
Playboy running team, and I was the first Playmate they ever allowed, um, you know, a sub-license, basically.
Okay.
And, that all stopped. It went from 93 to 97. I got pregnant in 97, so it was kinda hard to run.
And s- and so and so your brand, it goes beyond the running team, though. Don't you have? I believe I saw you have other business entities, books, like I said, the book, things like that. What made you decide to start focusing on your brand, and how would you describe your brand to our viewers and listeners? What is your brand?
My brand actually and I'm actually talking with someone about that right now, is that I've got a lot of scripts, a lot of writings, a lot of stories and everything. And I want to be as my brand as a speaker, a teller of truth and my truths, and hopefully other people will understand and, not be afraid that their truth is like mine.
Hmm.
In my speaking engagement, I talk about the fact that I've been raped 5 times and how I got over it, and, I've always wanted to raise the consciousness of people through maybe my stories, and, it's like you have a story, you keep it if you're gay, whatever, and I think that people need to hear things that they feel that they are not alone. You know, and
Hmm.
especially younger people, whatever they have that they feel it's a secret, that they're not alone.
Hmm.
And my brand is kind of telling my truth.
Yeah. You touched on something that's really important, and I agree with you 110%. Um, I think individuals, generally speaking, need to have a sense of connection with others, right? Especially if you've gone through some trauma, right? If you've gone through some trauma and there's the ability to connect with someone that you can kind of rely on and say, hey, so I appreciate the fact that you're willing to share your truth because there's likely others that may have similar experiences and then they too will not feel alone.
But
So I appreciate your willingness
especially
to do that.
especially in rape. I mean, there's still an untold secrecy about that. And I've gotten through it and walking on the other side. But a lot of women and men, that have had that misfortune need to know that they're not alone, and I had to live through it, and I've come out on the other side.
You have, and you're doing well from our view. You have 2 books out. One is A Centerfold. The first book you wrote, though, For My Eyes Only. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I wrote poetry in that book. My short stories in that book, I think, were really good.
Yeah.
And if anyone gets a chance, you know, to read it for my eyes only, it's on Amazon, and it's also so is Centerfold's like a collection of stories from Charlotte Kemp. The short stories are good, and I'm actually going to be coming out with a new book of short stories.
So the layers to you, Charlotte, are remarkable in terms of just, you're an author. You write stories. You write poetry. To use Smiley's word, it's fascinating. Some people, they're pretty one dimensional. It's kind of like I count widgets. I'm really good at counting widgets. That's what I do until I die. I'm just going to count widgets. You've definitely tapped into all of your full capacity in terms of, again,
Not
athletic.
yet. I mean, I'm in my 60s, but I have not reached my potential. I
Okay,
bel
okay.
I believe to just keep moving forward
You got to keep moving forward. How
instead
will
of,
you know? How will you know once you've reached your potential?
I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet.
But you don't feel it currently. You don't feel like you've reached your potential
No, I
currently.
don't
Okay.
feel like I've reached my potential because I think that there's more. God has me on this earth, whether you believe or not, and the universe still has me on this earth to go forward and, you know, put forth more.
Love it.
As a writer, how do you feel about AI and all this automation and all these technical gadgets writing books in seconds?
Well, AI has not done me very well. I got AI on my phone and it screwed up my whole phone. So I had to call AT&T and say, put it back. I know if you reset your phone, actually, you wipe everything out. I do know that much. I said, put it back the way it was. Yeah, yeah. AI kind of took over your phone or my phone. And it's even now wanting me to put it on my, Yahoo Mail. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the old for a little while, you know, because there's so many differentials. And it's like, what?
Let's just imagine it's 2035. You're talking to the Dre and Smiley show. And we're like, hey, Charlotte, how you doing? What's been going on for the past decade?
Same shit as always. Just moving forward
Keep moving
and
forward. I love
happy
it.
to do it.
So, before we switch to the final
You
4, one
both
question.
are quite handsome, by the way.
Yeah, I take after Smiley.
We were in Tampa and people are just like, hey, Dre. I mean,
It
yeah, he's the guy. He's like, if GQ was still popular, you would see Dre on GQ.
but well, Smiley's humble. He didn't tell you that he was a model back in the day as well. He modeled for
Yeah,
Ebony magazine.
He's got a
yeah.
beautiful smile.
Yeah, he
Thank you. I was
does.
on the back cover. I was at the bottom of the box. I was on like a cardboard box. The insert.
Next.
Okay, here we go.
Let's do it.
Oh, so hit him, Smiley.
First one, alive or dead, who would you want to spend 24 hours with and why?
I think now this is going to sound strange, but Virginia Woolf. She
That's cool.
was married, but had lovers, and her mind worked in a very mysterious way. Just seeing her melancholy and where it stemmed from, and she was a terrific writer too. That would be one
All right.
person. I
Okay,
mean, there's like 10,000 more, but yeah,
sure.
I like it.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?
becoming a playmate.
Okay.
That
And
was a
why?
big risk for me. My
Yeah.
father, when I left for Chicago to live there, my father had said, please don't do any nudity. But being Aquarian, of course, I have my own mindset. And within a year, I was a playmate. And that was the biggest risk.
What was the third final four question? What was the best piece of advice you've ever received and why?
The best piece of advice I think it was from my high school counselor, and he got me. And he said, "Charlotte, you're gonna do great things in this world." He said, "Yeah, I know you're crazy and everything else." I mean, I really kinda was. But he said, "You're gonna do great things in this world." And he said, "Stick to your own mind," you know? And yes, it's veered here and there, but he said, "Just always keep a sense of yourself."
Love that. What's the
Yeah.
best compliment you've ever received?
I pondered over that and had awesome, awesome compliments, and I thank everyone for them. I can't tell you what was the best compliment except for when my son was growing up and someone said, "Wow, he's beautiful." And I went, "I made that."
Well,
Love that.
here's what about this question as a bonus question?
As a bonus.
With all of your Playboy, Playmate, who was the one actor, actress that you met was like, "Oh my god, it's Denzel," or, "My god, it's Oprah," or whoever it was? Who was that one that just? Because I know in one interview when I listened to you, you talked about Tom Cruise and some other people that you met, and they were just, like, cool back then, but who was the one that had you tongue-tied that you met? Like and I'll tell you an experience. I like to read, and I met Anne Rice before she passed, and
Yeah, me
I
too.
I read
I
21 out
went
of
to
her
one of her,
32.
Halloween parties,
You
and
were
I was in awe.
exactly. So when I met Anne Rice, and I'm a talker, I'm a sales guy, I was stuttering. I was just so and she was and it was like so cool because I met all these other Hollywood types, so what? But Anne, I just loved her so much and I loved her writing and her so who gave you that feeling when you're around all these Hollywood types that just made you stutter, like you just couldn't believe this person was there or you met this person? As you had that experience?
You already hit, like, yeah, Anne Rice, and then,
I got the same.
there's
Grand Smiley.
Dre Smiley.
Leslie Nielsen, and when I was at the Playboy Mansion, Tony Curtis used to hit on me, and I never said yes because I was like, that type of ugh. And there has been so many that I've been tongue-tied, and it kinda like, "Come on, get your
Yeah,
words out.
yeah.
You're a
Right, right,
wordsmith.
right.
Get your frickin'
Right.
words out," you know? But, Leslie was and he did the old trick. When I was in the movie with them, I was leaning over him, and I sat back, and this was his big thing. I sat on a whoopee cushion, and it farted. And
Ah.
everyone looked at me, and I was like, "Oh my god." And he grabbed me and hugged me and said, "It's okay, sweetie, don't worry." And I was really young. He was one of the people that kinda, like, calmed me down, everything. Then I met this Japanese artist, and I did a couple movies and television shows in Japan. And this man had, like, charisma coming just out of his fingertips. And the things he drew, I mean, it was just kinda like total zen. And me being kinda hyper and asking questions all the time and everything, I was kind of just amazed. You know how you just kinda sit back and go, "Wow."
Mhm.
Like, "Wow. This person is awesome." Not a celebrity, hugely famous artist and everything. His whole manner of life. And it wasn't a celebrity or anything. He was just like his life just wow, made sense and kind of like it's those people that you kind of like draw yourself to.
Okay.
And there's people that are, you know, infatuators that, they draw you into the world when they need you. And if they don't, they kick you to the curb. This man just had a zen, Ruda, I think his name was. He just had this, and his parties were everyone was there, but they weren't, like, crazy. There were intellectuals and artists and everything, and to me, that was kinda like, wow,
Yeah.
tongue-tied and just taking it I just had to, like, experience everything in before I said anything. you know?
Sure. Sure. No, that makes sense. I think it's exciting when you can meet people like that who kinda just more or less take your breath away, right?
Pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
and it
What
hasn't
what
been
what
celebrities or things like that, that I can pretty much handle, but it's been people that have that essence, that aura that is just, wow, you know?
Yeah.
I'd love to be a part of that,
Yeah.
and he's the one who told me, he said, "Experience everything, go forward," you know? That's why I went to a car place and learned how to do things in cars. It's just like because I didn't know anything. And I was
Yeah.
like, you know, I need to learn some shit about that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
and
love
things
it.
like that.
Cheryl, I gotta tell you, you have so many interesting layers to yourself, right? And the fact that you embrace living your life to the fullest is, I think, approach many people almost are afraid to take because it veers off from the typical path. So I'm excited that you shared that with our viewers and listeners, that you are that you
Yeah, I always take the path less taken.
you're like a butterfly. You kind of just find your
I'm a
way.
zigzag.
Podcast.